And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first episode of hopefully many of the newest show here on the Daily Downforce, The Cutline. I'm your host, Armany DePaul. I'm a writer on the Daily Downforce, a sports broadcaster, but most importantly, I'm a lifelong NASCAR fan. I've been watching the sport for as long as I can remember. You know, I typically say around 2005, 2006, but I have memories all the way back to 2004, but you name it. Anyway, so welcome to this new show here on the Daily Downforce, The Cutline. But before we begin with the meat and potatoes, I'm going to give you guys just a brief explanation as to what exactly this show is going to provide to you all. So, for this show, we have something called, everyone knows what a cut line is. And no, I'm not talking about the playoffs. We're still months away before that's even a conversation. So, you have your above the cut line. You're in a good spot, whether you're locked in or you got your points, or you're below the cut line. Either you need a win or you need to gain a few points. Typically, if you're above the cut line, that's a good thing. If you're below the cut line, that's a bad thing. And this show is going to follow that in spirit. We will have two segments. A positive segment or above the cut line. Something that is good for the sport, which I'll go into it in a little bit. The clash at Bowman Gray, phenomenal. But again, I'll get to that later on. Then we got something that's below the cut line. Something that's negative for the sport. So, whether it's Corey LaJoie's comments or the fact that Bowman Gray may only host one clash. Again, we'll get all that later on. That's what this show is going to provide. We have something above the cut line, positive, and something below the cut line, negative. Now, typically on a normal race weekend, we will also have something called race weekend rankings. And what that exactly is we will take the races that go on throughout the week and we will rank them in a tier system. So there's tier rankings for your drivers. There's even tier rankings for your tracks. But no one has tier rankings for races. Everyone says Xfinity is always the best race of the week. But what if who's second, who's third? Who you name it. Maybe Cup or Truck happens to be better that weekend. So that's what that's going to provide. And then we'll also, every episode, including this one, we'll have a guest. We'll have a guest to bounce off of. So they may agree with my takes. They may disagree with my takes. And who's going to be our guest for tonight? You just have to wait for that later on in order to find out. But probably my most favorite part about this show is getting to talk with you guys that are in the chat. We'll pick out comments from all you in the chat as the episode goes on and our dedicated segment later on. And we'll just have a conversation. Because at the end of the day, we're all NASCAR fans. We all love the sport. We all care about the sport. And that's why we're all here. I mean, you can see the background. I know I have an F1 background, but it's like over here, it's like 90% NASCAR. And I guarantee you that's how it is for most of you as well. So, without any further ado, let's kick off episode 1 of The Cutline. Now, I said on a normal weekend we would have race weekend rankings. This isn't a normal weekend because it was just Cup with the Clash. So to compensate for that, we're going to have 2 segments that are above the cut line and 2 segments that are below the cut line. What's going to be episode 1 for above the cut line? Or segment 1 for above the cut line? I mean, we got to go with what we just saw, the Clash. Here you see we're on the Daily Downforce YouTube page right here, and that's just because the Daily Downforce, they do a great job. Everyone's social media, Ryan, everyone over there, they do a great job at showing the highlights. But I just want to show you guys a few highlights here real quick. So you see here, I mean, you got Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe. And to me, this is a perfect representation of what it is, of what the Bowman Gray has been for the Clash. When we went to the LA Memorial Coliseum all the way back in 2022, we were expecting beating and banging, hard-fought action, and we got that to a big extent, especially in the last year or two of the event. But it still felt kind of underwhelming. You know what I mean? Now, granted, that could be due to the car. The LA Coliseum is a different configuration than Bowman Gray, but overall, it felt like we were lacking something. There could have been a little more to the event. Bowman Gray, it delivered on everything And I mean everything we were expecting. It's called the Madhouse. I think that's an understatement as to what we saw here tonight. This is just an example. This is just in the main event, which, by the way, was a lot tamer than the Last Chance Qualifier or the Heats. We'll get to that later on. But, I mean, yeah, Kyle Larson and Chase Briscoe going around, but this wasn't just the only instance. There were so many times throughout the race where guys would spin out. Guys would get into it. Tempers were flaring. I mean, even in just the first heat race, Kyle Busch was getting pissed off at Justin Haley. And it was halfway through the race, not even halfway through the race. It was insane. It's like, this race is what we thought the Clash was really going to be from start to finish. And you know, I feel like the Clash, again, it was very hectic, but underwhelming at the same time. This race was not underwhelming by any way, shape, or form. It delivered on all aspects. But this is just one example. Let's move on here. We'll continue to scroll down here. And I mean, even when in its tame moments, I mean, you can see here with Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin battling for the lead. I mean, they're beating and banging. It's hard-fought racing. Yeah, they're not slamming into each other. I mean, yeah, they just had some beating and banging. But, you know, it's still respectful, clean, action-packed racing. Exactly what we expect out of NASCAR short track racing. Exactly what we have been lacking since the next gen was introduced. You know, minus a race here or there. This is exactly what we've been looking for. And Bowman Gray delivered on every aspect. And not even on the racing side of things. Take a look here. The new driver intros at Bowman Gray. I mean, look at this. And here's my thing. What annoys me the most sometimes about NASCAR is when the races don't feel like events. It doesn't, when they don't have that vibe that is, it's must see. I have to go to this. Then it's like, it kind of gives off that vibe of, all right, if they're not putting effort to promote it, why should I care to watch it? This intro alone shows me how much they cared about this event. How much Bowman Gray cares about this event. I mean, look at it. What other race do you see this for? And this is a driver intro, folks. Why Fox didn't decide to put this on TV, I have no idea. But this is incredible. Again, what other race do you see this for? Maybe a few here and there, but we need more of this. You know, they said that, oh, LA is a bigger market than, you know, Bowman Gray in North Carolina, which it is, but it does. I mean, if you were to show me this and tell me, not even tell me where the track was, I'd say, yeah, that's probably in a big market. That's probably in California, Miami, you name it. And I do want to mention one thing. I know there will be some people out there that say that, well, you know, the LA Memorial Coliseum had more people there than compared to Bowman Gray. I'm not 100% sure about the attendance off the top of my head. That could be true. But the fact of the matter is it's all about optics. I mean, sold out 20,000 seats here looks way better on TV, in person, you name it, than 30,000 people showing up in a 70,000 seated capacity facility. It just does. This looks great. This looks like you know the people on Facebook that say, oh, NASCAR died? Show them this. This looks amazing. I mean, just look at this one right here. You want to talk about the madness here, folks? Look at this. Yeah. Oh, wow. You had Ty Gibbs going airborne at a quarter-mile track. That is just amazing. You don't get that anywhere else. And this is this is NASCAR. This is grassroots. This is phenomenal. We need to go to more of this. This is what we need in NASCAR. This is what's going to get the sport to grow, in my opinion. Things like this, the optics around the event, the vibes around the event, everything from start to finish, it's just positivity. That's what the sport needs. And given how bad the sport ended last year, this is a great start to the 2025 season. So props to NASCAR. Bowman Gray, everyone, you name it. It is just incredible. But with the positive, there's always a negative. I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent here with Bowman Gray. Now, kind of going to mix 2 into 1 in terms of the positivity, because, I mean, what more can I say about the event? I mean, even the race itself, again, it was fantastic. You had a perfect mix of everything. And I'll make this my quick little second segment, but just the racing itself. We'll go back to here with, go back right here, Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin. I just showed you a clip of Ty Gibbs going airborne. Tempers flaring at a short track. That is exactly what we want to see. But we don't always want to see just bent sheet metal. I mean, even the last chance qualifier, I was talking about how, okay, we going to make it past 10 laps without a caution? It could get a little bit tiring at a point. This right here, I think, is what really seals it as well. Hard, tight, racing. Both drivers not giving each other an inch. Both drivers giving it 100% of their abilities, but still giving each other enough respect to where it's not a crapshoot. To where they're not just driving over each other. Like, say what you want all the way back in 2017, which was 8 years ago, about Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott. But these are two drivers racing hard for each other, but also showing respect. Again, you get the mix, you get the best of both worlds. You get angry drivers that just want to destroy each other on track. But you also get the respect and the close, hard racing. You know, this I would put this under 2003 Darlington, the finish, in the sense of they're racing hard but respectful, and everyone loves it. I love it. We get a mix of both. So, overall, Bowman Gray was fantastic. The racing, the promotion, the atmosphere, the lead up, the finish, you name it. Hats off to NASCAR for this. Incredible. Great job with the Clash at Bowman Gray. I can't say anything more for it. Alright, let's look a little bit in the chat real quick before we move on to our first Below the Cut line. KFB stole the show all weekend. Yep, he definitely did, especially early on. He stole the show, especially early on, Josh. Worst race of the year so far. Tyler, go to bed. Need this kind of show for Bristol night. Yes. Bristol's my favorite track on the schedule besides Homestead, but yes, we definitely need this for Bristol. Hopefully they bring a good tire. Short track racing is always better with angry drivers. Absolutely. If you don't have angry drivers, I mean, what's the point of short track racing? And of course we get E-Town. That's a little insider joke right there. Alright. So we discussed what's above the cut line. Now, unfortunately, we have to go to the negative side, below the cut line. I mentioned how NASCAR did such a good job with Bowman Gray and putting on this event altogether. So when I see headlines, when I see stories like this, where the event could possibly go somewhere Brazil, what are we doing? I got nothing against Brazil. I got friends in Brazil. But here's the thing. And I'm going to make a couple points here. To me, I find it very concerning that we're seeing these types of reports before the race even, the main event even starts. I mean, 5:35, nearly 3 hours before the race started. So that tells me that NASCAR's already been thinking about this for a while. They have viewed Bowman Gray as a one and done. Or they can bring it back in the future. Or maybe they're going to make the Clash a rotational race. Whatever. But after all the positivity that I mentioned, the atmosphere, everything, the racing, even just off the fact that, you know, NASCAR likes to talk about saving costs. You just ran the Clash in the team's backyard. You can't say more cost than that, but you're going to force them to go all the way overseas to Brazil? Not even just down the border to Mexico or Canada where they could drive? Like, come on. That makes no sense to me. To me, and I've said this for a while now, and I'm going to go a little bit off tangent here. NASCAR talks a lot about saving money and cost-cutting measures, but at their own convenience. They want to talk about cutting costs, but we're hosting an exhibition on the other side of the country. They want to talk about costs, but they're talking about, going to Brazil. We're going to Mexico, which I love the idea. And I don't want to come across as saying that NASCAR should only stay in the Southeast. I don't believe that at all. I like when NASCAR does things like this. I like it when they travel the country. I like it when they go international, because that's what the sport needs to do. You can't expect to grow the sport if you want to confine it to a certain area. It's not going to work. But at the same time, if you're going to do that, you can't, on the other hand, talk about, well, we need to save costs. You can't put your hand in one jar and then try to put it in another. It makes no sense. I mean, at that point, folks, it's like either go one way or the other. If you're going to go straight off cost cutting, let's go all in on cost cutting. If you want to go all in on expanding the sport, you got to understand you're going to have to spend some money. It's just going to happen. You can't expect to grow by contracting your product. But it's like NASCAR's trying to do both. It's like they're trying to balance it out and still expect to grow nonetheless. And it makes no sense. And I know I'm just talking about something kind of off topic in here. But again, it goes to my point here. Also, like, the product was phenomenal at Bowman Gray. NASCAR didn't even know what the race would look like. And they're already making talks that they're going to change the venue. Why? Why are they going to ruin something that possibly is going to work? Folks, the Clash has been, dare I say, irrelevant for the better part of almost a decade. If that wasn't the case, they wouldn't keep rotating it every 2, 3, 4 years. But we finally have something that's good. And we're already going to get rid of it? Again, I love the idea of going to places like Brazil. But if we're going to do that, make it a points race. Make it a race that actually is that, I don't want to say matters, but it has bigger stakes to it. Yeah, Chase Elliott won the Clash, but that's not going on his win column. Because it's an exhibition. If you want to get the international fans, give them a race that matters. Give them a points-paying race. A race that'll impact the championship and a driver's legacy. That shows that NASCAR is willing to put the effort. They're willing to put a grand event at an international venue. And I think that's what's going to get them to come. But having already talks that we're going overseas for the Clash, that we're going to change the venue from the Clash, to me, it's just ridiculous. That makes no sense whatsoever. I don't agree with it. So, that's our first below the cut line. Now, like I mentioned, we're going to have 2 this time. So, we're going to go back in time to a couple days ago for our second one. And that's talking about Corey LaJoie's comments when he announced his whole stacking pennies performance, his entry for the Daytona 500. If you guys don't know, we'll show it right here. And by the way, shout out to the Daily Downforce, of course. Great article right here. And they put it to the T. Exactly what was mentioned here. So, Corey LaJoie, he's going part-time with Rick Ware Racing this year. Kind of, it's a rebrand of the 15 car. It's going to be like the 01. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is Corey LaJoie's comments that he made to Bob Pockrass during a media day. So, here we go. Corey LaJoie said, Do you want to pump the ego up and hold a trophy on a Friday where there's 12 people in the grandstands? No. I want to compete against the best Because I feel like with every group that I've been, groups that I've built from the ground up, any given Sunday, we can go contend for a win, whether it's a speedway or we can run top 10 on any given week. Okay, we got a lot to unpack there. I want to start from the beginning, because this is the one that really got people riled up. Do you want to go pump the ego and hold a trophy when there's 12 people in the grandstands? You know, I mentioned this earlier. But thankfully, again, our friends at the Downforce, they already put a tweet here. And this tweet alone is the perfect example as to what we're going to discuss now. Your own father made it to the NASCAR 75 Greatest Drivers because of his success in the Xfinity Series. Folks, Randy LaJoie, Corey's father, he made a name for himself in the Xfinity Series. Two-time champ. So, what Corey's basically saying is that what his own dad did doesn't mean anything. Like, Corey. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I've never been a big fan of Corey LaJoie. To me, Corey LaJoie just comes across as, smug. He just comes across as someone who blames everyone but himself as to why he's not more successful than he thinks he should be. But that, I'm not here to discuss that. So, 12 people in the grandstands. Did he not watch the Rockingham test? Corey LaJoie, and there's more to the quote. There's more to the quote. He talks about how his sponsors want him in Cup. Which, why didn't you say that in the first place, Corey? Because Bob asked him, hey, why don't you take a full-time ride in Xfinity trucks? Why didn't he just say, oh, my sponsors want me a Cup, that's why? No one will blame you. No one will come after you. Well, maybe one or two people, but no one will come after you. Everyone's going to be like, okay, fair enough. They pay the bills. That's what they want, so be it. But you come across at this smug, dare I say arrogant. You come across as a driver who, and I'm going to be a little harsh here, a driver that accomplished something in this sport. Let's continue reading on. I want to compete against the best because I feel like with every group I've been in, groups that I've built up on every given Sunday, we could contend for a win. Name me, those in the chat, name me one race, not counting Atlanta, I think it was 2023. No, excuse me, Atlanta 2022. Name me one race that Corey LaJoie contended for a win. I'll wait. I'll wait for that one. Because let's go back to Corey LaJoie's teams that he raced with before. BK Racing. They were a dumpster fire before and after Corey was there, so I won't count them. Go Fast. He ran about the same as Matt DiBenedetto in the 32. And no indication, there was no time when that 32 Go Fast car was in contention to win a race. Not once. With Corey LaJoie, without Corey LaJoie. In fact, I think when Corey left, they went part-time. If you leave your teams in a better spot, I don't think going from full-time to part-time constitutes as, oh, I left them in a better spot. Spire Motorsports. He had the one decent year in 2023, where he finished, I believe, 25th in points. Solid. He had a solid year. Other than that, he's done nothing in that 7 car. He's not competed for wins. He's not competed for playoff spots. He's barely competed for top 5s. Top 10s once in a while. Again, besides Atlanta, that one year, you can't name me a time when Corey LaJoie competed for a win. You can't. So when he comes out here and says, we can go, build from the ground up. We can go contend for a win. When does that happen, Corey? This goes back to what I said. Corey LaJoie, he talks like a driver. It's funny. I said this in a group chat where said that, the saying, Mark Truex Jr., he talks like Dale Earnhardt, but he drives like Mark Martin. Corey LaJoie talks like Dale Earnhardt and he drives like Cody Ware. In the sense of, what have you done? And folks, I'm going to be honest with here. If there was any driver last year that was probably going to have to be replaced out of Cup besides Harrison Burton, hell, Burton's got more wins than Corey LaJoie. It would have been Corey LaJoie. Because what has he done? I feel like we kind of go off this segment of, oh, he's been in Cup for so long, he deserves his place. And in a way, that's true. But I don't think so with Corey LaJoie. Again, what has he done? He's done nothing. And yes, I know I'm coming off as harsh on Corey LaJoie, but I'm going to when he brings segment topics like this, 12 people in the grandstands, when your father made a name for himself, when your father was named a top 75 driver of all time for his work in the lower series. Like, what are we doing here, Corey? We can run top 10 any given week. He didn't do that last year. I think Corey thinks he was in the 77 last year with Carson Hocevar. By the way, he got destroyed by Hocevar, a rookie. And yeah, Zane Smith struggled in his first half of his rookie year. But he started pulling away from Corey at the end. I mean, when you have to get traded before the season even starts, to Rick Ware, that should tell you, that should have been a wake-up call for Corey. Clearly it wasn't. Now, yes, he's going to go into the TV booth. Yes, Corey, he's got a stacking pennies, podcast, all that. And I got some friends who are Corey LaJoie fans. But, to me, after what Corey LaJoie says here, it's just... Yeah. Yes, Josh. He'll probably be a goat in the booth because he does have that gravitas personality of he'll just say what he wants and that's that. And I do appreciate that because we need more of that in the sport. But, I mean, Corey, you've never won in trucks. You've never won in Xfinity. You never won a Cup. Stop talking like you're a 7-time champ. You're lucky to get 7 top 10s in a season. So, that's my final segment here for Below the Cut Line. Again, kind of ending a little bit on a down note, but again, just more of a rant. But again, shout out to this article for the Daily Downforce. It did a great job. But yeah, you can't be talking like that when you've done nothing, man. You just can't. You can't. So, those are my above the cut lines, and those are my below the cut lines. But I mentioned it earlier. We're going to have a guest on today. And, we'll go to the intro scene real quick before I bring him on. So, this guest, if you've watched any of my stuff in the past, Motorsport Ministry, NASCAR by the Nonsense, numbers, you name it, this guy has been either my first guest or frequent guest or co-host, you name it, for the better part of 6 years at this point. I know this guy for a long time. And if you've come across NASCAR Twitter by any semblance anywhere, you've seen his stuff. But his fame just isn't on NASCAR Twitter. It's also throughout the Carolinas. Track announcers for, great venues, great tracks. One of the best in the business, in terms of announcing at local short tracks. And I'll let him, do it for himself. But also, he is also the guy who helped me create the idea for this show, The Cutline. So I won't waste any more time. The first guest for The Cutline, you know him on Twitter as NASCAR Opinion. I know him as my boy, William Richard. What's up, man?
Man, I appreciate the flattery intro there, man. Just enjoying the night. Obviously, we got to see the clash tonight for Bowman Gray Stadium. What an event that race ended up being. It had some highs and it had some lows, but I'm doing well. The off season is coming to a close. Now we're just 2 weeks away from the Daytona 500. The clash, though, what a way to kick off the NASCAR season for 2025.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so you've heard everything I've talked about, my above the cut lines, my below the cut lines. Let's start off with the above the cut line. So I talked about, wrong one. Let's talk about the above the cut lines right here. I mentioned it how, the racing that we saw throughout the night, it was phenomenal. The crazy moments that we saw, there we go. The crazy moments that we saw, you name it. So, I mean, what was your opinion on the clash today at Bowman Gray?
Well, first, it started off with the last chance qualifier, and I think the LCQ was everything we dreamed of. We were really kind of hoping that translated to the feature. A little bit calmer in the feature. It seems like the guys that are really your championship contenders, your race winning contenders each and every week, they take care of each other just a little bit more. I would have personally liked to see them get a little more argy-bargy out there, but it didn't quite happen. But overall, I think the event was a success. I was a little doubtful just for the fact that it seems like we build up the hype for these events, and then the Cup cars just do what the Cup cars do. And we saw a little bit of that in the main event, but nonetheless, I don't think you complain about this event. I was tweeting out earlier. I think this year's Clash did something we haven't seen in a few years, and that was get you ready for more NASCAR. Last handful of years, this event's kind of just got lost in the fray of things. This year, I think it's got the fan base excited. I don't think you can really complain about what we saw tonight. Yeah, I would have liked a little more action in the main event, but there were still good moments. It wasn't like they were just single file for 200 laps. Overall, I thought it was really good. I think this is what you want as a sport to see. Obviously, we've already heard the rumors that it may not be back next year. Even Chase Elliott's comments in his post-victory speech on the front stretch made it sound like maybe the Cup Series isn't coming back. But, that would be frustrating because I think this year you have to consider it a success. I don't applaud NASCAR very often, but I got to get them one this time around.
Absolutely. Now, let's go to what you mentioned just now about how, we may not be coming back to Bowman Gray next year. And you heard my thoughts on it. We talked about it a little bit before we went on air, but what are your thoughts about, NASCAR possibly going to going away from Bowman Gray for the Clash and going possibly overseas to, Brazil?
Yeah, based on some of the comments online, I'm assuming it's sort of like a foregone conclusion that they're not coming back. It seems like one of those industry secrets that all of a sudden is a secret. Even Chase Elliott, like I'd mentioned, he said in his Victory Lane speech that he hopes they come back here one day. So it almost seems like they know that the Clash is going to be elsewhere. And it's frustrating. I think, my biggest frustration over the years for some of the things NASCAR has done is I think reaching back out to the grassroots scenes is very easy. They just don't always do it. I think they did it this time around, and it was a huge success. Maybe it might only be 17,000 seats, but it was sold out. There was a lot of buzz around this event. People were talking about it. Even those quote-unquote people that have been done with NASCAR for years were talking about the Clash this year. And, I love the idea. You mentioned it earlier. I love the idea of international expansion. I've never personally got to see international race since I've been a fan of the sport. So I would love to see that happen, or at least, see them leave, the North American continent. I think it's just frustrating, though. You finally get an event that was successful that people seem to enjoy, not a ton of complaints, kind of nitpicky stuff. And it may only last 1 year. Now you're leaving. So it's frustrating. You feel like NASCAR finally did something right. And, of course, they're going to make the wrong decision and go somewhere else, especially a place, Brazil seems to all of a sudden pop up. That's the first I'd heard of it was today. That seems to be getting a lot of buzz. I don't know where it would be. And outside of the Clash would probably love the idea of doing something there. But to me, does going to Brazil, a foreign country overseas, help you build the buzz for the great American race, which – these days is the point of the Clash. It's the point to just build momentum. NASCAR's here. Make sure you watch Daytona in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, especially how you mentioned how to build momentum for the rest of the season. And yeah, does going to Brazil really do that? It kind of goes back to what I said before. If I'd rather just have it its own, make it its own thing, rather than a build up to the year. So I agree with what you said. Go ahead.
Well, you saw people talking online. I love the idea of maybe every 2-3 years you go to another short track, and that's NASCAR's way of kind of giving back to the grassroots tracks. We could talk about it for days because I could rant about it forever. NASCAR has kind of just forgotten grassroots racing. They promote grassroots here or there, but in general, they've forgotten about it. They've left a lot of tracks stranded. And I think this is a way to give back. If you really want to get back in the good arms or the good graces of grassroots fans, do this. Every 2-3 years, go to a venue, fix it up, make safety upgrades, put this place back on the map in national television. You may only stay there for a few years, but that place is going to reap the rewards of that happening.
All right, let's move on to Corey LaJoie's top talks. Now, I know this is a couple days old. We talked about it, throughout the week. But, again, it's just, we talked about it earlier, and I even brought you up to the fact that his dad, and even this guy here, his dad made a name for himself, a top 75 driver in the lower series, and Corey just, says, yeah, that's nothing. It doesn't matter in Cup. I mean, what are your thoughts on what Corey LaJoie said, is maybe a little more merit? Should we give him the benefit of the doubt? What are your thoughts on what Corey said?
When I first heard it, I think it was easy to just say, why didn't you have a better answer, a smarter answer? He could have answered the questions that he was asked very simply. My sponsors want me to run on Sundays. I feel like I've earned my mark here. I want to win in the Cup Series, and that is my ultimate goal. But to then put down the other series, which, reminder, as you stated earlier, he's never won in. Also the same series that his dad is literally probably going to be an NASCAR Hall of Famer one day for. It's just frustrating. There was no need to put down the Xfinity and the Truck Series. Clearly, there's way more than 12 people in the grandstands. I get it. He was being overly dramatic, but it was just trying to throw those series under the bus, and there was just no reason to do it. This isn't someone like a Kyle Busch who's won, over 150 events in these series and all those things, talking like that. This was a guy that does not have a National Tour Series victory, and now all of a sudden you want to talk like you're big and bad. He's in the Cup Series because of his dad's last name or his dad's name. And, LaJoie's a guy, I want to see him win. I want to see him be successful, but he's had some comments over the last couple of years that just don't make sense for the position he's in. And I'm not trying to say, well, if you're better here, you're better that, you get to say this, but that's the reality. Certain players get to say certain things because they've done certain things, and he hasn't done those things. So I just thought it was off guard. I thought he doesn't have enough merit to say those things. And it wasn't respectful to the drivers in that series. Mind you, a lot of drivers in both of those series that probably should be in the Cup Series over Corey LaJoie.
I agree with you with a lot of those statements. So, I mentioned before, this is my favorite part about the show here is when, let's come here. We went through all the meat and potatoes. You and I went back and forth. Now, we get to go back and forth with everyone in the chat and the fans. And you know who's in the chat right now? My boy Chris Lilly here. Which, by the way, shout out to Chris Lilly. He made this excellent background here for the Cutline. Even we'll just go quickly to the stream starting soon. But he even made this. He made all this. So, credible talent. Chris Lilly, phenomenal. I want to give him a shout out for that. But let's go into the chat, Will, and I'll read it off to you. We'll see what everyone has to say here. So, we'll go here with Josh. By the way, shout out to Josh as well for help getting this off the ground. If more guys with the name recognition of LaJoie stayed or went back to the lower series, they'd probably be more than 12 people in the stands on Friday. I mean,
well, I've always stood by it. I think I understand why they limited Cup guys going back. I understand it. I didn't hate the move that they couldn't run for the championship. I'm fine with that. It doesn't really bother me. But to me, me and you've had conversations about this for years. It seems like guys come to the Cup Series now and they struggle a lot more than they used to. You used to see guys as rookies and second-year drivers start competing for wins right off the bat, making playoffs, things of that nature. And I think part of the problem is you don't have those big named guys going back and running that many races. I think they can run 5 right now. So, Kyle Busch, instead of running 22 Xfinity Series races, he gets to run 5. And I think a lot of the younger drivers, they learn better by beating Cup Series guys. And I think it used to be more impressive for those guys. A guy like Brad Keselowski's the perfect example. Brad worked hard, eventually won races against Cup guys, but he also ran top 5, top 10 every week. And obviously, he ended up being a Cup Series champion. And I think I agree to that, but trust me, there's way more than 12 people there. There's good crowds for those events. And I think really, if you know the fan base deeply, a lot of people really respect those series. I like to see some more Cup guys go back because I think it makes the field better overall.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, yeah, it's going to make the drivers better, but you're also going to overshadow the young talent. I mean, remember, when Cup guys were, like, in the 2010s, like the early 2010s, you were getting nothing out of the lower series. So it's like a double-edged sword. So it's like, maybe not do 5 races, maybe 7, 8. Like, there's got to be a balance.
Well, I'll say this though. I think, unfortunately, with the Cup guys not being able to run, I think you've replaced a lot of those seats with just paid drivers, and I think that's frustrating. And I think that's another thing too is, the Cup guys used to kind of bring a lot of that funding because they were Cup guys. Now you kind of have to hire a paid driver. We can name certain guys that are in series. We're not going to do that, but we could name certain guys in series that probably shouldn't be there, even if they've been there for years. You're thinking, why is this guy still in a top level ride? So I think you got to watch that out too. I would personally rather see 15 Cup guys run the Xfinity race than 15 guys I've never heard of before. They've got a couple of late model starts. They brought enough money to go to, an Xfinity race at Phoenix or something. I think you got to watch that balance too. But I get it. In sort of a way, it's paid its dues. I mean, you got guys like a Noah Gragson who probably would have got lost in the fray against Cup guys, and now he's a Cup guy that has a decent fan base. So it's got its pros and cons.
Go to another one here, the Daily Downforce. I think this is the last breath for Corey LaJoie's run. Hopefully he does well in the booth. And then Josh said there's definitely a timeline where he is a GOAT in the booth. Yeah. I mean, I hope he does well, but it's like, Corey, I don't know what you're doing, man. I've said enough. If you got anything more to say, but I went on my rant about Corey.
I don't know how he's going to do in the booth. I mean, you would think he's kind of got a poppy personality, so you would hope it works. But you just don't know. Sometimes being a broadcaster is just a different game. To me, though, for me, if you're LaJoie, I just hope he can humble himself enough to realize that the Xfinity or Truck Series may be his only options in a couple of years. He doesn't seem like a guy that's going to go back full-time Cup unless he finds some major funding. And weirder things have happened. LaJoie again goes back to slandering series that he potentially may be running in full time in the next couple of years. If he chooses to, he may pivot and go to the booth. That may be the smarter thing. The way he's acting, that may be the smarter thing. But we'll see. I do agree, though. I think LaJoie being a full time Cup driver, barring finding a major sponsor, is probably over with.
All right, let's go to another one here. Downforce. This had a. Oh, here we go. It just came with the new one. I thought that the Clash should go international, but NASCAR has kind of backed itself into a corner. Putting on an absolutely spectacular race. If it leaves Bowman Gray, a lot of people will be upset. I mean, yeah, you hit it on the nail there, especially with, getting, the grassroots especially, really connecting with that fan base again. And if they go to Brazil, I mean, you're kind of doing what you did with LA. You're kind of just chasing that fan base away.
Yeah, it's almost like they would have rather had this be just a crapshoot. Like they would have rather just this been annoying wrecks every lap. Like I think they backed themselves into a corner because it was a relatively respectful and fun weekend. You had a little bit of both worlds. You had the last chance qualifier in the heat races where they're up on the wheel, they're hitting each other, they're crashing, they're spinning. But then you also had the feature where you prove that these guys are some of the best drivers on the planet. And so I think you have the best of both worlds. And again, the grassroots connection to me is the biggest thing. NASCAR finally does grassroots the correct way. They didn't manufacture a dirt track. They didn't go build a short track somewhere on the West Coast. They went to a place that existed, has a history, has a legacy, has a fan base, and it was a success. Who would have thought that would have worked? But it worked. And now they do it one time and they say, yeah, we're going to go overseas. And NASCAR just continues to find ways to make decisions very, very difficult. And I think they have backed themselves into a corner. Ideally, this would have been the time where they would have rather been like the Daytona road course, where it was unforgettable. Nobody really cared. Because then if you make the announcement we're going overseas, then everybody goes, whoa, this is way different. At least we got to do something. Now you have the feeling that we found something, and here you are, being NASCAR, trying to change it again.
Finally, we go with this last one from Josh. They should do it at a different local short track if they're going to rotate the Clash. International and street races, for that matter, should be for points, not the opening exhibition. That's what I'm talking about. Exactly. Why are we going overseas for an exhibition, for a race that really doesn't matter? You're not getting...
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. If you're going to force these guys to go because they are mandated to go, they're even mandated for exhibitions. But if they're mandated to go, make it, why do we shortchange other fan bases? If we're going to do it, just freaking do it. Exactly. Go overseas, because even though, I'm trying to put myself in someone whose shoes that lives in a country that NASCAR has never ran there or doesn't race there. I don't want to feel like I'm being shortchanged as this is the race that really doesn't matter. Yes, it's still going to be cool. That doesn't, that's not the point. The point is, Why is it any different than any other race? And then you have to explain to the fan base, well, this isn't in every other race. This is just a race we're doing for fun. Why make it complicated? If you're going to go overseas, just commit. Luckily, they're doing that with Mexico this year. It's a points race. Everything's normal. So, I don't know the hesitation to just make it a regular race. Just go out there and do it. Just like I get frustrated with, why don't you just have a points race at North Wilkesboro or Bowman Gray? Just make it a points race. Just why do we shortchange people?
Well, that's going to do it for this first episode of the Cutline. Will, unless you got anything else you want to say, I want to appreciate you for coming on, being the first guest. And, where can we find you?
You can find me on TikTok and Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, at NASCAR_Opinion. And hey, if you're in the upstate of South Carolina region, check me out at Anderson Motor Speedway this year. I'll be announcing there. But Armani, man, you've been going back for a good many years now, a couple of podcasts and different things. And glad to see this. I think this is going to be a huge success for you at the Daily Downforce, and happy to see the opportunities coming your way.
Appreciate it. Hey, want to give a thank you to the Daily Downforce as well for helping bring this together. Again, shout out to Chris Lilly for this design. And, everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this first episode of the Cutline. If you guys want to know where you can find me, you can find me on Instagram, X, or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, at Armany DePaul. I think you forgot Chris Lilly last comment. You're welcome, Chris. You're welcome. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Armany DePaul. Got some stuff going on there. Make sure you guys check out Daily Downforce, dailydownforce.com, as well as Daily Downforce on YouTube as well. John does some fantastic work there as well. And shout out to the guy who thought that I was John during the first short that I made for the Daily Downforce. And he said, why does John sound like he was smoking? That made me laugh. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. We won't be here next week because that'll be the Super Bowl. That is not a NASCAR race, but we should be back for the Daytona 500. So with that, we're going to send it off, and